There's not much on the LP website about Bill, so I had to. He's married to Melinda. That's the extent of it. And I think Melinda is studying for exams. That's why she's
right.
And Bill's jetting off to Scotland tomorrow. So we were lucky to get him. He's been a great friend to our ballot access issues, and we're glad to have him here. Welcome, Bill Redpath.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, all of you North Carolinians, for having me down, and thank you for your involvement in the Libertarian Party. After all, with the exception of an executive director here and there, and the employees in the national office, we are a volunteer organization, and you are here voluntarily, giving your time and money and resources voluntarily, and I just want to say thank you for being part of this great experiment in liberty. And I'm pleased to be here. And I want to thank Barbara for putting this convention together and for juggling the schedule. Actually, I called her several weeks ago and said, Barbara, I got a problem here. I was to be the dinner speaker this evening. And then, and I'm going to speak to why I'm going to Scotland during my address here today. But I said I'm scheduled to fly out of Dulles Airport at 5:30 p.m. on Sunday to London, and I would rather not get up in Hickory, North Carolina on Sunday morning and get in the car and have to drive home and in 2 or 3 hours have to pack for a week in the UK. So could you move me up to lunchtime? And she obliged. So thank you very much for accommodating me in that regard. During this address, you will learn that I need bifocals, as I will take my glasses on and off periodically, but maybe I should just leave them off, and I'll just assume that all of you will not change its identity. But in any case, there's plenty of room to move up in the Libertarian Party, even when you unwittingly make boo-boos from time to time. Libertarians are forgiving and will readily forgive you, and I was forgiven for the following incident. Back in December 1991, I had a day trip to Cleveland. I've lived in the D.C. area now for 21, going on 22 years, and I had a day trip to Cleveland for business in December of 91, flew up in the morning, flew back in the evening, and when I got to the airport in Cleveland that evening to fly back to National Airport, I was standing, of course, at the Continental Hub, I was standing at the Continental Airlines ticket counter, and some woman came up from behind me and said, excuse me, I just drank a glass of wine, maybe I'm seeing things, but is that David Duke standing over there? And I look around, and sure enough, it was David Duke standing there at the gate at the Cleveland Airport. This was just after, he was recognizable because this was just after he had lost the runoff against Edwin Edwards, governor of Louisiana in 1991. And so he was, just a lot of people would recognize him at that time. And for whatever reason, my travel agent that day bumped me up to first class, and a very rare thing for me, unfortunately. But and get on the plane, and David Duke, what do you know, sits in the row behind me for the flight from Cleveland to Washington. What he was doing was flying from New Orleans to Cleveland to Washington National to announce at a press conference in D.C. the next day that he was running for president in 1992. Well, of course, I couldn't pass up, and a lot of people couldn't pass up the opportunity to speak with David Duke. And the conversation was interesting. And let me tell you, everybody should pound a couple beers with David Duke and have a conversation.
Everybody?
It was interesting. But then the one guy asked him, he says, are you afraid of getting shot? And he goes, no. And but then I told him that my then in-laws were Jewish, and he scared the crap out of them, and he got rather defensive about that. But then I told him about the Libertarian Party. At the time, I was national treasurer. I said I was in the Libertarian Party, and I told him what the Libertarian Party was about. So when I get home that evening, I call up the then national chairwoman, Mary Jingle, and I say, you're not going to believe what happened, but I just flew on a plane from Cleveland to Washington National and sat in the row in front of David Duke, and he's flying into D.C. To announce that he's running for president tomorrow, and talk with him. And she says, and I told her about the experience. She says, wow, that's quite a story. That's amazing. Thanks, Bill. We hung up the phone. And the next day, she calls me. My phone rings in the office, and she says to me, It's Mary Jingle calling me. She says, "Hey, Bill, David Duke had his press conference in D.C. today." And I said, "Yeah, I know. I told you that on the phone last night." She said, "Bill, do you know what he said at the press conference today?" And I said, "No, what?" And she said, "He said he was a libertarian." I wonder who gave him that idea. And I said, "Gotta go, bye." And, so anyway, but I survived and was forgiven, and so there's plenty of room for forgiveness of errors in the Libertarian Party, and thank you for being a part of it. Please continue working with us even after hearing that story. But anyway, the Libertarian Party. I think one has to keep the Libertarian Party in perspective. We are part of the larger libertarian movement in the United States. As you know, there are many think tanks. I could go down the whole list, but you probably already know them: Cato, Reason, single-issue groups, including LEAP and others who are our fellow travelers. And the LP, a lot of small L libertarians at times look down on the Libertarian Party. And they may agree with us on 98% of the issues or more, but if you drop them in a Libertarian Party group, they probably get up and head for the door immediately. They just, and frankly, at times I think that I appreciate what they do. I have great respect for them, but sometimes I think that they don't realize that the Libertarian Party has the toughest job in the Libertarian movement. Being a political party and taking the Libertarian message to the people is the toughest job in the Libertarian movement. Granted, putting on conferences and publishing public policy studies and things like that, that's one thing. But actually, making the rubber hit the road and taking it to the people is something is a horse of a different color. And the problem that we have, particularly as a political party in this nation, is that we are a political minority. We are a political minority in a winner-take-all voting system. And that's what makes it so difficult for the Libertarian Party. We have a single-member plurality voting system, meaning single-member legislative districts, person with the most votes wins. And I think political scientists, almost to a person, would tell you that the natural result of such a voting system is two dominant parties, if you even have two dominant parties, which sometimes isn't the case, but basically two dominant parties, both running for the center, trying to offend as few people as possible in those single-member legislative districts so they can win at least a plurality, or sometimes a majority of the vote in those districts, plurality of the vote, so they can win that seat in the legislature. And I would say that small L libertarians would have a right to criticize the Libertarian Party if there were other minor parties that were succeeding in the United States, but that's not the case. I mean, you've got the Green Party and the Constitution Party and the Working Families Party and the Reform Party. Basically, at this point, is essentially out of business. I think maybe they have ballot access in 3 or 4 states at this point. And clearly, I think in terms of depth, in terms of breadth, in terms of number of votes that we get, the Libertarian Party is the top, I'll say, minor party. Michael Munger says the top non-state-sponsored party, using his language, in the United States. And we have to work to keep it that way. And it's not that we always come out number one. I hate to say it, but in Virginia, for instance, last year in Virginia, the Libertarian Party of Virginia fielded 1 candidate for U.S. House out of 11 U.S. House seats. And the Independent Greens fielded 4 candidates for U.S. House out of 11 seats. So and there are certain pockets where the Green Party is probably stronger than the Libertarian Party in certain parts of the United States. Taking the nation as a whole, the LP is top among minor parties, and we need to work to keep it that way. And I'd like to address that later on. But I hesitate to say this because really I think my message today is a positive message of hope. But I have for quite a while now come to question whether the Libertarian Party is going to be a political success is going to be an electoral success. We could be a political success without being elected if we influence the other major parties. Okay? All right, but let me say electoral success. I question that the Libertarian Party is going to be an electoral success in the United States without change to some form of proportional representation for our legislatures, without some sort of electoral reform. And I've discussed this over the years with many people, including Richard Winger. And Richard Winger put forward an interesting proposition. If you don't know him, he's editor of Ballot Access News. Ballot-access.org is his website. He is the foremost expert in terms of ballot access laws in the United States. There's unquestionably it's the case. I once was deposed in a lawsuit against the state of West Virginia, and Carl Hess was deposed, and Richard Winger was deposed, I was deposed. Well, I sat in on Winger's deposition, and there was an attorney for the state of West Virginia who broke down during the deposition. He broke down during the deposition, quizzing Richard Winger, and he said, I think it was on the record, at one point because he brought up certain things, and Winger always had a retort. He didn't realize Winger could quickly run through his mind and come up with a yes, but answer in Oklahoma this, or in that state that, whatever. And this guy just all of a sudden he just goes, he says, you sure do know your ballot access law. He said it right during the deposition. I thought it was very strange. But in any case, Richard Winger put forward the proposition that he thought that proportional representation would probably have to come to the UK or Canada before it comes to the United States. Most developed democracies, and I won't go through a whole exposition. I mean, you can get online, Wikipedia or what have you, to find out more about proportional representation or instant runoff voting. Now, in North Carolina, you should be up on IRV, which does away with the spoiler element, so to speak, with ranking candidates in a vote transfer process, and you can get online and find out how IRV works. But the experiment is, I believe, that there are going to be 10 cities in North Carolina that there are going to be some trials regarding instant runoff voting in North Carolina, and so this state is moving forward in that regard. IRV was passed. They are using it in San Francisco. It failed in Alaska in 2002, but in 2006 there were 4 cities that passed electoral reform. It was up in 4 cities, in Oakland, in Minneapolis, in Pierce County, Washington, Tacoma is the county seat, and Davis, California, all passed electoral reform measures, 3 of them being instant runoff voting and the other being single transferable vote in 2006. So actually, we're just at the beginning, but electoral reform does have political legs in the United States. And most of the developed democracies in the world have proportional representation, not first past the post voting, such as we have here in the United States, which is largely at this point confined to the United Kingdom and its descendant nations. But the reason I'm going to Scotland is that they are changing the system in Scotland, and coming up on May 3rd, next Thursday, May 3rd. There are going to be elections in Scotland, and for the 3rd time, they are going to use a proportional representation system to elect the Scottish Parliament. And it's called mixed member plurality system, whereby they have 73 ridings or districts in Scotland, and people will step into the voting booth, and like elections here for legislatures, they have their district, and they get to vote for their favorite candidate in that district. But then they also have a party list vote. They will have a party list vote, and they will vote for their favorite party. And then the legislature will be filled out based on the percentage vote that party gets. So if say there were a Libertarian party in Scotland, I don't know that there is, frankly, but let's say that there is. If they wouldn't win any single-member legislative districts, they could still get seats in the legislature based on the party vote. And I'll get to Canada in a moment, because a very important vote is coming up in Canada in October. But so for the 3rd time, they're using mixed member proportional system to elect the Scottish Parliament, which is going to allow a number of parties seats in the Scottish Parliament. But then they have local councils in Scotland. 32, they're essentially city councils in Scotland. There are 32 of these. And for the first time, they are going to use a method next Thursday called single transferable vote, which allows people to rank their candidates, first choice, second choice, third choice. And they are going to go from having one person per district to 3 or 4 representatives per district, multi-member districts in Scotland, which will allow more people of more political persuasions to become elected, will give a much greater chance for political minorities to actually get their members elected, and for political minorities to have effective political representation in Scotland. So Scotland now is going to have, again, it has had mixed member, a proportional system for the Scottish legislature, and they're going to use single transferable vote starting next Thursday to elect city councils. But where things are really moving forward is in Ontario. Actually, I have said this before, and I really think this is true. The most important vote for the Libertarian Party of the United States in the year 2007 is in Ontario. Now, coming up October 10th, 2007, which will be the, that's Libertarians a trivia question here. October 10th, 2007 will be the 50th anniversary of what? No. No. The 50th anniversary of the publication of Atlas Shrugged will be October 10, 2007. But in any case, on that day in Ontario, there's going to be a referendum. They just had a citizen commission where they had, I believe, 103, citizens that were randomly selected from around Ontario to review the current system for electing the legislature in Ontario and to review possible alternatives. And by a vote of 94 to 8, well, first of all, within the alternatives, they picked mixed member plurality. Again, a system which allows people to be elected from single member districts, but also there is for people to vote for their favorite party. And there's a compensatory mechanism that allows parties to get people elected to the legislature, even if they don't win any single-member plurality districts. I'll get to that in a moment. But these citizens, by a vote of 94 to 8, voted to put a referendum on the ballot in Ontario to change the method from single-member districts for the Ontario legislature to mixed-member proportional. They will have, the plan is that there will be 90 single-member districts. And this just occurred to me. I am going to assume, I don't know this, I'm going to assume that it's a unicameral legislature in Ontario. I didn't think to ask this question, but I believe that would be the case. They will have 90 single-member districts in Ontario, and then they will elect another 39 for a total of 129 members. And let's say that the Libertarian Party didn't, and the threshold is 3% on the party list vote. If a party gets at least 3% of the vote on the party list, they will be able, they have to declare the people, if they get to appoint people based on the compensating party list, if they get to appoint people to the legislature, they have to name the people ahead of time. If we get 3 seats, it'll be these 3, this is our 4th choice, this is our 5th choice, this is our 6th choice. But let's say that the Libertarian Party got 4% of the vote, didn't get anybody elected to the 90 seats, elected through single-member districts, but got 4% of the party vote. Well, then they would get 4% of 129, which is going to be 5, I believe, in the ballpark of probably 5. The Libertarian Party. Okay, well, I'll take that as a 6. But we won't carve anybody up to fill a portion of an individual. But 5 or 6 anyway. Members of the Libertarian Party in such a circumstance would be appointed and be members of the legislature in Ontario. And this will allow, again, a number of parties to succeed and be able to elect people to legislatures. But there is one undemocratic thing about it. They've set it up where it's going to take a 60% yes vote to pass. They set it up where 50% plus won't do it. It's going to take a 60% plus yes vote. And there's been a howl of protest about that. And it might happen. The 94 to 8 passage by the Citizen Commission, that's a pretty strong endorsement. And it may happen. And if that occurs, and there is a proportional system to elect the legislature in Ontario, that will be a great step forward for electoral reform in the UK and its descendant countries, and that hopefully will bring about some consideration of this in the United States. It's not going to happen without initiatives and referenda. I mean, let's face it, the major parties are going to throw up every argument that they'll come up with American exceptionalism, and they'll we can't have radicals in the legislature, and back in 2002 I was listening to a debate on the instant runoff voting initiative in Alaska, and it was funny. This one guy who was arguing against the IRV initiative in this televised debate before the August 27, 2002 vote, says, if we have instant runoff voting, he says, there will be kooks in the legislature. And my reaction was, hey, take it easy, I'm a kook. But in any case, yeah, really. But that would be nothing of the sort. I mean, it just shows you the arguments that they will come up with, that the Republicans and the Democrats and the political status quo, everything in the kitchen sink will be thrown at people who want to advance some sort of electoral reform or let anybody else into the political process. I mean, look at Bob Smither down at the Libertarian Party of Texas last year in 2006. I mean, I think at the end of the day, Republicans would rather have a Democrat take seats because it helps perpetuate the two-party system. They'd rather have a Democrat in there. If the Republicans are going to lose, they'd rather have a Democrat than some minor party, because that could begin to upset the whole cozy system that they have between the two major parties. So in any case, and a lot of people then say, how do we get it? Well, through initiatives and referenda. There are 24 states that have initiatives and referenda. I think INR is important because I think there are some issues which generally I think that INR is a good thing, but there are certainly some issues in which the legislature has a conflict of interest, and we need to be able to take certain issues like ballot access, campaign finance. I think that there are certain issues that inherently they have, and of course electoral laws, they inherently have a conflict of interest, and be able to take those issues at the very least to the citizens in the United States is badly needed. So I think that again, the vote in Ontario is going to be very important for the future of electoral reform in the United States and the future of the Libertarian Party. Now, I do want to say one thing. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that libertarianism will come about with proportional representation. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that it would allow, I think the Libertarian Party would be a major party in the United States if we had a system of proportional representation here. I'm not saying that our policies would be enacted by the legislature or anything like that. There are all sorts of different ways to work for liberty. Everybody in here has chosen to work at least part of the time through the Libertarian Party, and I'm very thankful and grateful for that. But to that end, I think there's nothing wrong. Everybody pursues their self-interest. I think, first of all, for our democracy, proportional representation would be better. But for the Libertarian Party, it certainly would be better, would give us electoral life that we have not known to date in our 35-year history. Just want to tell you about one other thing before we talk about what to do in the interim until the future gets here, which I think it's going to be a multi-decade process, but I do think eventually that instant runoff voting and proportional representation will be adopted on a widespread basis in the United States. I do think it's going to be a multi-decade process. I'm very uncertain if I'm going to live to see it, but I do think it will eventually happen. There is something else I want to talk about just for a moment, just to bring to your attention, and that is the National Popular Vote Plan that has some real political legs right now. There is a plan afoot called the National Popular Vote Plan, and what it is to try to persuade states to pass laws that say the following: we, fill in the name of the state, will cast our electoral votes for the winner of the national popular vote for president. Okay, and that this compact, it would be an interstate compact that would not become effective until states that controlled at least 270 electoral votes all passed it. Until that would occur, that it would not become effective. Maryland has already passed this and signed this into law. I can't tell you, it's several dozen legislatures have passed this plan, and I think that I've talked with some people who think that there is a non-trivial chance that by 2012, it certainly won't be in place by 2008, but this has shown some political legs. The American people have shown by a wide margin that they don't like the Electoral College and would like to see it repealed. It's going to be very difficult to repeal it through a constitutional amendment, but this national popular vote plan may effectively override the Electoral College. And there is I've talked to some people who think that there is a chance that this national popular vote plan might be in place in time before the 2012 presidential election. Now, what to do in the interim? I do think that people within the Libertarian Party need to work for electoral reform, but as I've said, this is obviously not an oversight process. I think that what we should do is work to be the best damn political protest party we can possibly be. And by that I mean, that doesn't mean that we go out and do protests. If you want, got nothing against it. If you want to do it, fine. I certainly have no problem with that. But what I'm saying is that I think the Libertarian Party, with its resources, needs to focus on the one thing that the Libertarian Party does that no other Libertarian Party organization, Libertarian organization does, and that's run candidates for office. And that is where the Libertarian Party needs to focus its resources to run people, in my opinion, let 1,000 flowers bloom. If somebody wants to run for city council, let them, encourage them, whatever rings people's chimes. I think that I don't support the idea of focusing resources on one race. I hear frequently people, well, we ought to pick one U.S. House race and put the whole party's resources behind the one U.S. House race, and we win that, and at least we get somebody elected to the U.S. House. Well, first of all, I question whether we would win it, even if we did that and poured all our resources into a U.S. House race. To me, it's questionable that race would even be won. But I don't think it's possible to maintain a national political party with a very narrow geographic focus. In fact, it's the politics of geography, as I said earlier, with the single-member districts that really effectively keeps us down. But I think that we want to field as many candidates, and even though the races for U.S. House or the U.S. Senate right now are, let's face it, pretty much unwinnable for Libertarian Party candidates, I think they are a very effective way to get the Libertarian political message across. There's nothing wrong with running a good, principled campaign and at the end of the day, not winning. There is nothing wrong with that. And there's a lot of good that can come from it. A lot of good. You never know who you're going to influence, what student you're in a high school or a college you're going to speak to, who's going to hear the Libertarian message for the first time, and ultimately, who knows, maybe become a candidate or some sort of party official in the future. I have run for office myself 3 times, all for state offices. Someday I plan to run for federal office, run for state house, state senate, and governor in Virginia, governor in 2001. And it was a great experience. And I run into state parties that sometimes discourage people from running for certain types of unwinnable offices. I really hope that the various state parties don't do that. Even if the office is not considered winnable, it's almost always worth the fight to get I want people to miss us. I want the public to miss Libertarian, and that may not sound very ambitious, but I think in a sense it is. I want people to say, if we don't run a candidate, I think it would be a big deal to say, you know what, I wish there'd been a Libertarian candidate. That race wasn't as good. That election wasn't as good. I really want there to be a Libertarian candidate. And the more we show up and the more we keep at it, the sooner we are going to be an electoral success, which I do think is eventually going to come to this party. And I just want to say one other thing as well. I think there are 2 problems here. I think for the long term, I've been a party member now since 1984. I've been active since 1986. A lot of people come into the party and they get burned out. I think the way to avoid that and be in this for the long term, which I have been and plan to be, is to adopt a balanced approach, not a losing mentality, but at the same time, in fact, this was a comment that I heard, I did not see it on C-SPAN, but I heard it attributed to Brian Doherty, who wrote the Radicals for Capitalism book, which was published recently, and somebody saw it and said that he said the following. He said that there are two enemies, so to speak. Pessimism is an enemy, obviously, but what can also be an enemy is excessive, unwarranted optimism, where somebody thinks that they're going to be elected to something, or somebody thinks that the Holy Grail is right around the corner, and then they become very disappointed and disillusioned when it doesn't occur. And I think that this is a long-term proposition. The fight for liberty is a long-term proposition. Involvement within the Libertarian Party should be a long-term proposition. And I think the only way that it's not going to be a sprint, it's a marathon. And I think keeping a balanced perspective, a realistic perspective about this party and its candidates and what we can do will be the best for the individuals involved for this party and for the party itself over the long run. So I do think we will eventually be a political success. Michael Munger is from what I can tell, just on a positive note, we're going to get this ballot drive done, and we're going to get on the ballot. And I think Michael Munger, assuming he gets the gubernatorial nomination, has an outstanding chance to get 2% of the vote. And I know we all want to put petitioning in North Carolina behind us for the long run as well. And I think there's an excellent chance for that occurring. So whatever you can do to affect that and have that success will be greatly appreciated. So again, thank you very much for your kind attention. And I'd be happy to, it's 1:20 right now. I want to leave a little time for Q&A. So just thank you for your attention, and I'll take any questions that you have. Sean?
Steve.
Excuse me.
Yeah, my question is, I'm curious about what's the motivation in Scotland right now, in Ontario, to try to change things, right? To change things? Yeah, to change things. Okay, yeah.
If you take a look at Fair Vote Canada's website, fairvote.ca, and they have a picture of a doctor on there, and it's the same thing that's happening here in North Carolina on the lpnc.org website. It's right on there about all the legislative seats where somebody ran unopposed. I mean, they also realize in Canada that they have a dysfunctional democracy. It's just that in Canada, there is a lot more public uproar about it, and a lot more. See, here people, people here are disgruntled, but I don't think they've really been exposed to some ideas regarding electoral reform, and they really don't know what's wrong. Oh, it's the money. Some people say, oh, it's the money. It's the dirty money in those campaigns. We get the money out, and everything's just going to be peachy. And or it's this or it's that. But I think most of the problems of our democracy basically come back to the antiquated 18th century electoral system we now use, which most democracies around the world don't use. And but they're just more aware of the situation, and they are taking steps to try to change it, which we have not come to that point in the United States yet. Tom, you had a hand up.
Yes, you spoke about democracy generally and about the popular vote for president in particular, as if that was a good thing. Why should we believe that it's a good thing?
Personally, I think it is a good thing for the following reason. The Electoral College, libertarians believe in individualism. The Electoral College treats groups as more important than individuals. And I think that I'm in favor of the national popular vote plan. I think the Electoral College is antiquated. I think it is dysfunctional. I hear a lot of arguments that it promotes federalism and stuff that you can have federalism. That is a separate issue from the way we handle our election for president. I think that it would put more of a national focus on the campaign because let me tell you, just as an aside, living in a swing state during the presidential season can be hell. Let me tell you,
how about living in Utah or Nevada and no presidential candidate ever goes there or cares what
Well, who cares? Who cares if the presidential candidate comes to town? Good Lord, we have telecommunications. Hitler came to my town. I guess I'll vote for him. You know, I mean, seriously, Tom. Okay.
Or cares what you think.
I think that individuals, it should be based on the votes of individuals, not groups. People will care. Look, they don't care. I don't understand that
It's an excellent argument against democracy and theory.
Indeed.
There's not going to be a benevolent dictator who's going to come down and run our world, because it's not going to happen. And of course, my idea of a benevolent dictator might be different than a lot of people's idea of a benevolent dictator.
You think those are the two choices? Benevolent dictatorship and democracy?
I beg your pardon?
Those are the two choices we have? Dictatorship and democracy?
No, we're going to have a democracy. That's already decided.
But I mean, you focus if that was the only.
No, I'm not. So I'm saying. What I'm saying is, the point I was going to make was just a small thing. I was back visiting my parents in Findlay, Ohio, which is in the Toledo television market. Just a very minor thing, but I'm telling you, it drove me up the wall. The presidential television commercials in Toledo during the last few weeks. I was back in September of 2004, and we were watching something on a Toledo television station. And I mean, it was absolutely unwatchable several weeks before the presidential election. I mean, commercial after commercial after commercial, Kerry, and then a Bush commercial, and a Kerry commercial, and a Bush commercial. Minor thing, but I think that there would be, you would no longer have a focus on certain few states by the presidential candidates late in the campaign, and there'd be more of a national focus for the campaign, I think. But I also think that, as I said, I think with telecommunications as it is, I don't think it's necessarily that important. It would be good for candidates to get out and get around, but I don't think it's really that important ultimately that a candidate come and visit a particular locality. Are there any other questions regarding the party or?
One more.
Okay.
Yeah, Shane.
Shane.
With you're saying the Libertarian Party starts achieving more political success, more electoral success, do you see there as being a problem with people who aren't libertarians coming in just for the power and the opportunity and, in essence, corrupting the party? And if so, what would you do to prevent that?
I think that the people who would come in, I think that the party would remain highly libertarian, because the people could find, there'd be a number of parties, so people would be more able to find a party that really suited their political tastes, so to speak. Do I think that the Libertarian Party would, there would be more people who would come in who would be, I think they would still be in the Libertarian quadrant, so to speak. But I don't think there'd be much in the way of watering down the Libertarian Party. I don't think there would be. You'd simply have people, I've been hearing it for 20 years. Oh, there's about to be a jailbreak out of the Republican Party into the Libertarians. You know, they just can't stand it anymore. They can't keep their meals down anymore in the Republican Party, and they're about to make a big break for the LP. Well, it hasn't happened, and why is that? I mean, in any major sense, it hasn't happened, because at the end of the day, before they take the jump, and there are exceptions, like Bob Barr, all right? And I know there was controversy, but there is a man who has jumped to the LP and has forsaken the power and the privilege of the Republican Party to join us, and that is a good thing in the big picture, I think. But there are a lot of people like him who, in many respects, are libertarian, but they won't make the jump because they don't want. They say, if I turn my back on the Republican Party, I will be iced out of one of the major parties. At the end of the day, I won't have an effective political voice. Even though I can't stand the Republican Party right now, I just can't make the jump to a party that's not really in the political game right now. That would change under proportional representation.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, thank you.